Late spring in the forests of northern America, where the light is so clear the lake mirrors the blue sky without distortion. Deep within the trees stands an old military hospital, vines crawling over its walls. Not haunted, not broken, just waiting. A veteran Navy SEAL walks the ridge at dawn, his German shepherd moving quietly at his side, the world calm and almost forgiving. They are not hunting, not hiding, just breathing in a life rebuilt away from noise and command. Then the dog stops. No bark, no lunge, just a low, controlled growl in the middle of the forest, the kind that warns of something you cannot see yet. What did he sense in that silence? And where are you watching from? Tell us below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to The Last Command 9. Late spring in the far north didn't arrive like a celebration. It arrived like a clean breath. Snow still clung to the shaded seams of the hills, but the world had softened. Mud replacing ice, water replacing silence. Sunlight fell through tall pines in pale, steady shafts, and the lake beside Declan Voss's cabin held the sky so perfectly it looked like a second world laid flat beneath the first. Declan had chosen this place because it was bright. People assumed men like him went into the woods to disappear into darkness. The truth was simpler and harder. He wanted space where his thoughts couldn't echo off concrete walls, space where memories didn't have corners. He stood on the porch with a chipped enamel mug warming his hands. At 43, he still carried the shape of a life built around readiness. 6'1", shoulders broad, body dense with trained strength that hadn't softened into comfort. His face looked carved rather than born, angular, a firm jawline, a faint roughness of beard that never quite became a full, neat grooming habit. The beard sat on him like a decision he didn't want to keep making. His eyes, blue-gray, deep-set, were the kind that measured distance without appearing to stare. Sun had browned his skin into a steady tan, and the lines around his mouth suggested he had learned to keep words to himself. His hair was short, dark brown, clipped in a practical military cut, with early silver at the temples that looked almost accidental. He didn't style it. He didn't style anything. His one constant uniform matched the life he lived now, an olive field jacket with a worn collar, a red and deep blue plaid shirt beneath it, dark cargo pants that moved easily through brush, and scuffed brown leather boots that told the truth about mileage. On his wrist sat an old military watch on a fabric strap. Nothing flashy, just time. In his pocket was a folding knife he used more for rope and wood than threat. Over the back of a chair inside, his Eberly stock half-track pack waited like a silent habit. He had no patches, no emblems, no bright declarations of who he used to be. If someone looked hard enough, they could still see it in the way he stood. Weight balanced, knees loose, attention wide. But he didn't offer it. The forest didn't ask. Behind him, nails clicked once against the cabin floor. Mara stepped into the doorway with the quiet authority of something that didn't need permission to enter a room. She was a German shepherd, 8, maybe 9. Her body lean and compact, muscle tight beneath short, thick fur patterned black and gold. The muzzle was touched with a faint gray that didn't weaken her. It sharpened her expression into something older, more deliberate. A simple brown leather collar circled her neck, scuffed from weather and time. No vest, no tactical gear, nothing that turned her into an advertisement. Her eyes were the first thing most people noticed. Dark, deep, intelligent, always searching. She didn't look at the world like it was scenery. She looked at it like it might move. Mara was disciplined, loyal, and quietly intense. She almost never barked. When she did, it came in a single controlled note, like a door slamming once. More often, she communicated through stillness. A stopped breath, a shifted weight, a sudden freeze in her stance that told Declan more than any sound ever could. He had trusted radios with less reliability. Declan set the mug down and stepped off the porch. Mara moved with him, not ahead, not behind, at his side, close enough that her shoulder occasionally brushed his pant leg. The two of them followed a narrow trail into the trees, the ground damp with thaw, the air smelling of pine sap and wet earth. A bird called somewhere high above. The lake behind them flashed between trunks like pieces of broken mirror. Declan didn't come out here to meditate. He didn't sit on rocks and heal. Healing was a word people liked to use when they didn't know what else to say. Declan came out here to do what he could understand. Walk a perimeter, check for storm damage, see if the trail had fallen apart, and make sure his world stayed predictable. Predictable was safe. But even as the day felt gentle, he could sense a thread of tension he couldn't name. It was the same feeling he used to get in a city crowd when the laughter was too loud and the smiles didn't reach eyes. Here, there were no crowds. Yet the thread remained. Mara paused once, nostrils flaring, then continued. Declan watched her body language without looking like he was watching. That was their rhythm. She read the world. He read her. They passed a rise where the forest opened slightly, and sunlight spilled across new grass. Farther ahead, through the trees, a shape sat like a scar, half-healed into the landscape. The old hospital. It had once been a military annex, small, remote, built for a purpose that stopped being spoken aloud when budgets changed and wars rolled into other wars. Now ivy and vines crawled along its pale walls, not strangling it, just claiming it. Broken windows caught light like dull teeth. The building wasn't haunted. It was simply abandoned in a way that felt intentional. Declan didn't like it. He told himself he didn't care. He had noticed it months ago and left it alone. He had no curiosity for forgotten places. Forgotten places were where people stored what they didn't want found. Mara slowed as they approached the area where the trees thinned. The air changed. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden cold, no gust that made him flinch. Just a faint sharpness riding under the spring's scent. Like metal warmed too quickly. Like ozone after a storm, except the sky was clear. Declan's hand drifted toward his jacket pocket, not for the knife, but out of reflex. An old habit of making sure something familiar was within reach. His watch ticked steadily, indifferent. Mara stopped. Not a casual stop. Not a sniff this tree stop. She froze. Her front paw hovered a fraction above the ground. Her ears lifted, then angled forward. Her entire body locked into a stillness so complete it looked like she had become part of the forest. No bark, no growl. Just absolute silence. Declan halted too. The world didn't feel louder. It felt emptier. Even the birds seemed to pause their conversation. He followed Mara's gaze. There was nothing visible. No man stepping from behind a trunk, no animal crossing the trail, no movement in the windows of the hospital. Only sunlight and vines and shadows. Yet Mara's stillness carried weight. This wasn't fear. It was recognition. Declan had seen this posture before in places where a wrong step meant death. He had learned to respect it like a second set of eyes. "Mara," he said softly. Not a command, more like a question. She didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the hospital. Declan listened, letting his attention stretch outward. He heard wind in needles, a distant drip of meltwater, his own breathing, nothing else. Still, The hair along Mara's back rose in a faint line, as subtle as a sentence half-spoken. Declan felt his chest tighten, not from panic, but from something older. The body remembering before the mind could label. He crouched slowly beside her, keeping his movement calm. His voice remained quiet. "What is it?" Mara's nostrils flared again, and she shifted her weight back half a step, as if something ahead had crossed an invisible boundary. Then, as quickly as she had frozen, she moved. Not forward, back. She pressed against Declan's leg, turning her body so that she was slightly between him and the hospital, angled like a shield. A protective stance. Declan's throat went dry. He had not trained her to do that. He had chosen her because she was considered unpredictable under stimulus, a phrase he'd read in a file he wasn't supposed to have. The paperwork called it a liability. Declan had called it a conscience, now that conscience was standing in front of him. A flicker of memory tried to surface. Sterile rooms, white lights, the pressure of headphones, a tone that started low and crawled up into teeth. Declan pushed it down before it could fully form. He rose slowly and took one step back, keeping his eyes on the hospital. Mara matched him instantly, steady and silent. They didn't run. Running made you a target. They retreated the way he'd been taught to retreat. Calm, controlled, refusing to announce fear. Only when the trees thickened again did Mara relax her shoulders by a fraction. The birds resumed their calls as if nothing had happened. The forest returned to its bright, breathing innocence. But Declan felt changed, because the world had just done something it rarely did for him anymore. It had warned him. They returned to the cabin by late afternoon. Declan busied himself with small tasks, splitting kindling, checking the hinges on the door, cleaning a muddy boot tread. He moved like a man rearranging objects to keep his thoughts from rearranging him. Mara stayed close, unusually vigilant. She paced the edges of the yard, then sat by the steps, facing the line of trees. As the sun slid toward the horizon, the lake turned gold. Warm light filled the cabin through the windows, making the space feel less like exile and more like home. Declan cooked a simple meal and ate without appetite. The quiet pressed in, not heavy, but insistent, like a friend who refused to leave. When night finally came, it came gently. The sky deepened into blue-black. Stars began to appear, bright and sharp in the clear northern air. Declan stepped outside one last time before sleep, more out of habit than need. He stood on the porch, scanning the tree line. Mara sat at the doorway behind him, head high, eyes unblinking. She did not follow him onto the porch. She held the threshold like it mattered. Declan let his gaze drift across the lake, then toward the forest beyond it, toward the hospital. In the darkness, it was almost invisible, a darker shape among darker trees. And then it happened. A light, brief, pale, unmistakable, flared in one of the upper windows. Not the soft glow of moonlight, not a reflection on glass. A controlled, deliberate flash, as if someone inside had turned something on, then off. Declan's body went still. Mara rose silently, every muscle tightening. She didn't bark. She didn't move toward the trees. She stayed at the door, guarding the cabin, guarding him. Declan kept his eyes on the dark building until his vision started to ache, waiting for another sign, another flicker. Nothing came. Only the lake reflecting stars and the forest pretending it had never spoken. Declan reached behind him and shut the door with a soft click. Mara did not leave her place, not once, not all night. Morning came without ceremony. Declan Voss did not sleep much, but when he did, it was shallow. Like a man who never fully unpacked his gear. The forest outside his cabin woke gently, wind brushing pine needles, distant meltwater slipping over stone. Light pooled across the lake in pale sheets, erasing the memory of night. Mara was already awake. She stood near the window, still as a carved figure, her dark eyes scanning beyond the glass. The faint silver along her muzzle caught the sunlight. Her ears shifted slightly as if tuning to a frequency beyond human hearing. Declan watched her for a moment before speaking. "We're going back." He didn't ask if she agreed. He dressed the same way he always did. Olive field jacket, plaid shirt beneath, cargo pants, boots laced tight. The weight of the half-track pack settled across his shoulders with familiar gravity. He checked nothing theatrical, just habit. Watch secure, knife in place, no weapon drawn. He didn't want to go armed, like he expected a fight. That would change the way he thought. The old hospital sat less than a mile from the lake, tucked behind a low ridge. In daylight, it looked almost reasonable. Its pale concrete walls washed in gold, vines tracing soft patterns along the facade. Windows shattered long ago caught the sun like fractured ice. It didn't look threatening. That made it worse. They approached from the side, not the direct trail. Declan avoided open lines of sight by instinct, stepping where earth would not hold a clear imprint. Mara moved close, body alert, but not tense. Her tail hung neutral, not fearful, not relaxed. Declan paused at the edge of the clearing and studied the building. No vehicles, no visible movement, but the ground told a different story. Near the loading entrance, faint impressions marked the mud, fresh enough that water had not yet filled them. Boot prints, deep heel strike, tactical tread. Declan crouched beside one and touched the edge. Still crisp, recent, he murmured. Mara leaned forward, nostrils flaring, but did not step onto the prints. She avoided them carefully, as if the scent irritated her. The front doors had long since fallen inward. Declan stepped inside. Dust motes floated in wide beams of sunlight pouring through broken panes. The air smelled of old paper, mildew, and something sharper beneath it. Cleaner, metallic. The lobby was stripped, chairs overturned, reception desk empty, no sleeping bags, no food wrappers, no signs of long-term squatters. If someone was using this building, they weren't living here. They were working here. Declan moved slowly through the corridor, boots silent on cracked tile. Mara kept to his left, head low, scanning corners before he did. A door halfway down the hall stood ajar. The placard above it read, "Records." Inside, the room had been disturbed recently. Metal filing cabinets stood open, some drawers removed entirely and stacked against a wall. Papers littered the floor, but not randomly, more like someone had searched and moved on. Declan stepped over scattered folders and knelt. He lifted one file. Veteran intake, 2009. Another. Neurological response assessment. His pulse slowed, not panic, recognition. He opened a folder that had been placed deliberately on the desk. The paper inside was newer than everything else in the room. Clean, white, printed. At the top, in clear black letters, Phase 2, Reactivation Candidates. Declan didn't feel shock. He felt inevitability. He scanned the list, rows of names, ages, service branches, status markers. Then he saw it. Voss, Declan, eligible. He did not blink. He turned the page. Beneath the header, technical notes described the objective, not enhancement, not augmentation. Stabilization. Reactivation of suppressed combat reflex pathways in veterans exhibiting chronic stress dysregulation. He exhaled slowly. Not super soldiers. Restoration. Or that was the language they used. He closed the folder and stood. Mara's head snapped toward the far end of the hallway. Her body stiffened. Not the full freeze from the forest yesterday, but close. Her ears angled toward the floor, not the walls. Declan felt it then too, a faint vibration underfoot. So subtle it could have been imagination. But it wasn't rhythmic, like machinery above ground. It felt contained. Below. He looked at Mara. "You hear it?" She did not move. Instead, she turned and walked toward the stairwell at the back of the corridor. Halfway down the stairs, Mara stopped abruptly, not because she heard something, because she refused to go farther, her paws planted, muscles rigid. Declan took one more step down. Mara stepped sideways and placed her body directly in front of him, blocking the descent. Not protective, defiant. For a single breath, she looked up at him. Not past him, not through him, at him. Her eyes were not fearful. They were warning him. And in that gaze, something flickered in Declan's memory. White walls, headphones pressed tight, a tone rising slowly inside his skull. He hadn't remembered that sound in years. He swallowed. "It's okay," he said quietly. Mara didn't move. For a moment, he almost turned back. But the old part of him, the part that hated unfinished questions, pushed forward. He gently stepped around her. She followed, reluctantly. The vibration grew clearer near the basement level, not loud, not mechanical, but a low hum felt more than heard. The basement door had been replaced recently. New steel, fresh lock plate. Declan crouched and examined it. No forced entry marks. Whoever was inside had keys or authorization. He studied the hinges, then looked at the ceiling where an old air vent ran along the corridor. He removed a loose vent cover, hoisted himself up, and slid through the duct. Mara remained below, pacing silently. The duct opened into a secondary room adjacent to the main basement space. Declan dropped quietly onto the floor. The air here was different. Sterile, sharp with ozone and electronics. Cables snaked across concrete. Portable power units lined the wall. At the center stood a compact machine built around a circular array of emitters, precise, clinical. A neural stimulus array, not large enough for theatrical science fiction, just enough to be plausible. Screens along the wall displayed biometric readings, waveform patterns, response latency graphs. Declan stepped closer. He recognized the design. 15 years ago, he had sat in a chair under something similar. Phase 1. He had volunteered. He had told himself it was research to help veterans manage stress responses after combat. He remembered the first session. Tones introduced gradually. Controlled exposure. Reflex measurement. He remembered telling another man it would be fine. A younger man. Marcus. Declan's chest tightened. He moved to the control console and scrolled through logs. Recent sessions recorded. Identifiers anonymized. Then, one entry displayed partially before glitching. Subject YD, MD-17. Status, active. He froze. MD, Marcus Doyle. The screen flickered. A secondary document opened automatically. Protocol notes. Reactivation trials for long-term stress dysregulation in former special operations personnel. Not to create weapons, to prevent collapse. He read deeper. Sustained combat readiness can become a liability in civilian life. Controlled reactivation cycles may stabilize neurological pathways and reduce self-harm risk. Declan felt anger rise and then stall. The statistics listed below were real. Veteran suicide rates, chronic insomnia, unregulated stress spikes. This wasn't monstrous ambition. It was desperate logic. He scrolled further. Personnel listing. Technical oversight. Then he saw it. Doyle, Marcus, field liaison, active. The room seemed to tilt. Marcus had been declared dead 8 years ago. Vehicle accident, closed file. Declan stared at the name. He remembered Marcus clearly. Taller than him by an inch. Lean build, dark hair always falling slightly out of regulation. A crooked grin that surfaced even in hard moments. Marcus had laughed louder than anyone in the unit. Too loud, some said. As if trying to outrun silence. He had trusted Declan when Declan said Phase 1 was safe. Marcus had signed the paperwork because Declan did. Declan stepped back from the console. He felt something fracture, not externally, but inward. If Marcus was alive, then the story had never ended. A faint scrape sounded behind him. Declan turned sharply. Mara stood in the doorway. She had found another way down. Her body was tense but not panicked. Her gaze moved across the equipment, nostrils flaring. She did not approach the central machine. Instead, she moved to Declan's side and sat. Not guarding the room, guarding him. Declan looked once more at the screen. The word active glowed beside Marcus's name. Alive, present, involved. He powered down nothing, touched nothing. He memorized the layout instead. Then he stepped back into the hallway and retraced his path through the vent and up the stairs. They exited the building the way they had entered. Quiet, unobserved. Sunlight outside felt almost indecent in its warmth. Declan paused at the edge of the clearing and looked back at the hospital. It no longer felt abandoned. It felt operational. Mara stood beside him, shoulders squared toward the building, eyes narrowed slightly. Declan exhaled. "Marcus," he said under his breath. The forest did not answer, but it did not deny him either. He turned toward the trees. Behind him, inside the hospital basement, a monitor flickered back on. Declan did not return to the hospital immediately. He waited until late afternoon, when the forest light thinned and shadows stretched long across the clearing. The timing was deliberate. Whoever operated the equipment below ground would be rotating shifts, adjusting schedules, assuming safety and routine. Routine created gaps. Mara walked beside him, closer than usual. Her gait was fluid, but her head remained slightly elevated, as if the air itself required scrutiny. She did not appear agitated. She appeared calculating. Declan moved differently now. Not like a man investigating a mystery, like a man retracing a mistake. He had told himself Marcus Doyle died 8 years ago. He had attended the memorial service remotely. A short notice circulated through private channels. Single vehicle accident. No foul play suspected. It had sounded clean, final. Declan had accepted it because he needed something to end. Now the name active pulsed in his mind like a wound reopened. They entered the hospital through a rear maintenance door this time. The hinges creaked faintly, but the interior remained silent. Dust still floated in light beams. The illusion of abandonment held steady. Declan bypassed the main stairwell and returned to the ventilation route he'd mapped in his head. The metallic smell below was stronger now. Ozone and warm circuitry. Mara remained behind at the duct entrance. She would not enter the basement chamber again. Her refusal was no longer panic. It was choice. Declan dropped into the secondary control room and moved immediately toward the central console. He did not power anything down. He accessed stored logs, video archives. Multiple camera feeds appeared across the screen, corridor views, equipment close-ups, biometric stations. Then one feed opened automatically, A man stood near the primary stimulus array, reviewing a tablet. Declan's breath left him before he could stop it. Marcus Doyle had aged, but not evenly. He was still tall, lean, shoulders straight from years of training. His dark hair had grown shorter than before, clipped close to the scalp. A narrow scar cut along his right cheekbone, pale against sun-worn skin. His jaw carried a sharper edge now, as if tension had sculpted it over time. A trimmed beard shadowed his face. Not neglect, but practicality. But it was his eyes that changed everything. They did not rest. Even while reading, they moved. Micro-adjustments, scanning, recalibrating. His posture held a subtle rigidity, the kind that comes from a nervous system that never powers down. Marcus looked alive. He did not look free. Declan leaned closer to the monitor. The audio feed crackled faintly. "Increase amplitude gradually," Marcus said, voice controlled but tight. "Don't spike it. We're stabilizing, not escalating." A technician responded off-screen. Marcus turned slightly, revealing the side of his neck where faint electrode scars traced pale arcs into his hairline. Declan's stomach twisted. He remembered the early sessions, white rooms, headphones, a tone that rose slowly until it vibrated through bone. He had told Marcus it would help recalibrate stress thresholds. He had believed it. 15 years ago, Marcus had been different. He had been the loud one in the unit. Quick to grin, quicker to deflect tension with humor. He was the kind of man who made others feel steadier simply by standing beside them. Then came the deployment that fractured everything. An operation that spiraled sideways. Civilians caught in crossfire. A decision made under seconds that left Marcus awake for nights. He hadn't said much after that. When Phase 1 recruitment circulated quietly through command channels, experimental neurological therapy for post-combat stabilization, Declan had volunteered first. Marcus followed. Not because he believed in the research, because he trusted Declan. The memory burned hotter than anger. On screen, Marcus finished giving instructions and stepped closer to the camera. For 1 second, he paused. His gaze shifted upward, not toward the technician, not toward equipment, toward the camera lens, direct, intent. Declan felt exposed. The image froze briefly, then resumed. Marcus turned away. Declan stepped back from the console. He felt a strange collision of relief and dread. Marcus was alive. Marcus was involved. Marcus was not the man who laughed at nothing and everything. A sudden distortion flickered across the video feed. The screen glitched. Not a full blackout, but a pulse. Static rippled outward in concentric lines. For a fraction of a second, another face appeared layered over Marcus's image. It wasn't clear. Just a flash of a younger version of him. Marcus, 15 years ago, eyes softer, hair longer, a half-smile forming. Then it was gone. The feed stabilized. Declan stared at the screen. That wasn't a recording artifact. The timestamp had not changed. It was as if two versions of Marcus had briefly occupied the same frame. Declan's pulse climbed, not with fear, but with recognition. The equipment wasn't just stimulating reflex. It was mapping neural patterns, preserving them, overlaying them. He looked again at Marcus's posture, too precise, too aligned with the machine behind him. Not controlled by it, but synchronized with it. The idea lodged itself in Declan's mind and refused to leave. What if Marcus wasn't operating the system? What if he was the proof of concept? Declan navigated deeper into the archives. Session logs labeled MD17 displayed recurring cycles: stimulation, recovery, recalibration. Notes indicated improved response latency and reduced dissociative drift. But under physiological metrics, sleep duration averaged less than 3 hours per cycle. Cortisol levels remained elevated. Autonomic baseline never normalized. Marcus was functioning. He was not resting. A memory surfaced uninvited. Marcus once told him, after a night, "Mission overseas. You know what I miss? Just turning it off. Just being nobody for a minute." Declan had laughed it away. "Turn it off when we're done." They were never done. Footsteps echoed faintly down the basement corridor. Declan's body shifted automatically, shoulders lowering, weight adjusting. He cut the monitor feed but left the system active. He moved toward the duct entry. Mara's nails scraped softly against metal as she signaled from above. He climbed swiftly, emerging into the hallway just as voices filtered up from below. "Field liaison approved the next round," someone said. Another voice, Marcus's, calmer now, closer. "Keep it contained. No external footprint." Contained. Declan and Mara exited the building through a side door and moved into the tree line without haste. Running would create noise. Noise would create narrative. They reached the edge of the forest before Declan allowed himself to breathe fully. Mara looked up at him, head slightly tilted. Her expression was not confused. It was searching. "He's alive," Declan said quietly. The words felt foreign in his mouth. Alive. The forest around them held its brightness, indifferent to the revelation. They walked in silence until the lake came into view. The cabin stood unchanged against the water, small and steady. Declan stopped before stepping into the clearing. He felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not relief. Responsibility. He had brought Marcus into Phase 1. He had signed the consent form first. If Marcus had never left the program, if the discharge and reported death had been a fabrication, then someone had rewritten more than a file. They had rewritten a man. The cabin felt different now. Not sanctuary, but boundary. Mara's ears lifted suddenly. A faint crunch of gravel echoed from the far side of the lake. Too distant to identify, but distinct from wildlife. Mara's lip lifted slightly. Not a bark. A low, controlled rumble vibrated from her chest. Declan turned toward the sound. The gravel path leading to his cabin was not visible from here, but the direction was unmistakable. Someone was approaching. Mara's growl deepened, still restrained. Declan's face hardened, not with fear, but readiness. The past had not stayed buried. It had followed him home. The forest did not darken. That was the unsettling part. Sunlight still poured between the pines in clean, steady columns. The lake beyond Declan's cabin shimmered calmly. Birds moved in restless arcs above the tree line. Nothing looked wrong. Everything felt wrong. Declan did not step out into the open clearing when he sensed movement near the gravel path. He stayed within the line of trees, body angled slightly, breath controlled. Mara stood at his side, her posture coiled, not aggressive, not barking, just wound tight with contained energy. Then he saw them. 3 men emerged from the direction of the road, walking casually as if they were hikers who had lost their way. They were not hikers. Each wore dark outdoor jackets, no logos, no obvious tactical insignia, but their movements gave them away. Balanced, alert, heads turning in micro intervals to check blind spots. One man scanned the windows of the cabin without appearing to look. Private security. The man in front appeared to be in his late 30s, compact and muscular, with close-cropped sandy hair and a neatly trimmed beard that framed a square jaw. His face had the weathered texture of someone who had spent years outdoors, but not camping for leisure. His eyes were cool, analytical. He carried himself like someone used to giving instructions without raising his voice. Behind him walked a taller man, broad-shouldered, with dark hair pulled into a short knot at the back. A faint scar curved down his neck into his collar. His expression was neutral to the point of emptiness. The third man hung back slightly, younger, leaner, scanning tree lines with precise glances. They were not here to intimidate. They were here to confirm. Declan stayed still. He did not reach for the knife at his pocket. He did not move toward the cabin. He let them believe he was elsewhere. Mara's gaze fixed on the leader. Her ears angled forward, body silent as stone. The men stopped at the edge of the clearing. The bearded leader studied the cabin for several seconds, then nodded subtly to the taller man. No words, no radios. They were not raiding. They were assessing. After a moment, they retreated the way they had come, vanishing into trees without urgency. Declan waited until their footfalls faded completely. Only then did he move. He did not follow them directly. He paralleled their route at a distance, stepping through brush where the undergrowth would soften his sound. Mara flowed beside him with measured precision. They stopped near the ridge overlooking the hospital clearing. A black SUV sat partially concealed behind brush, engine off. Declan recognized the silhouette before the door even opened. Marcus stepped out. The sun caught his face fully this time. No screen between them. The sharp line of his jaw, the scar on his cheek, the subtle tension in his shoulders. He looked like a man permanently braced for impact. Declan did not step forward immediately. Marcus sensed something before he saw him. His posture shifted, chin lifting slightly, eyes narrowing. Then their gazes met across the clearing. No shock crossed Marcus's face, only recognition. He raised one hand, not in greeting, not in surrender, just enough to signal he had seen Declan. The private security men stiffened instantly, but Marcus gestured for them to hold position. Declan stepped out of the tree line. No weapon drawn, field jacket open, hands visible. The distance between them was roughly 30 yards. Marcus's voice carried cleanly. "You always did pick high ground." Declan didn't smile. "You always did ignore instructions." A faint, almost imperceptible twitch passed over Marcus's mouth, something like the ghost of an old grin. But it didn't stay. The security men watched, ready but restrained. Marcus stepped forward alone. Up close, the differences were sharper. The lines around his eyes were etched deeper. His gaze did not soften when it met Declan's. It measured, calculated, assessed threat probability. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said calmly. "I could say the same," Declan replied. Silence stretched between them. Mara moved half a step in front of Declan, not blocking him, but aligning her body with his. Marcus noticed her immediately. "She's older," he said, not as an insult, as data. "Still faster than you," Declan answered. Marcus's eyes flicked briefly to the hospital, then back. "This isn't what you think it is." Declan let out a slow breath. "I read the logs." Marcus didn't flinch. "Then you know it's not weaponization. It's still control." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's stabilization." He took another step closer, lowering his voice. "You know what happens when we come back and try to live like civilians? You've seen the numbers. I've seen the funerals." His eyes hardened, not with rage, but exhaustion. "We can't turn it off, Declan. It doesn't shut down just because the make us monsters. It regulates what's make us monsters. It regulates what's already broken." Declan studied him carefully. "You sleep?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. That pause said enough. Before Declan could speak again, one of the security men approached from the SUV holding a tablet. "Sir," he said quietly. Marcus glanced at the screen, then nodded once. "Let's move inside." Declan followed, not as a prisoner, not as an ally, as a witness. Inside the basement chamber, the neural stimulus array hummed softly, low, controlled, almost gentle. Technicians worked with clinical focus. Then the main display flickered. A video screen activated. A woman appeared. Mid-40s, composed, seated in what looked like a glass-walled office overlooking a city skyline. She had straight dark hair cut at shoulder length, precise and deliberate. Her skin was pale but healthy, posture upright. Her suit was charcoal gray, minimal, professional. No excessive jewelry, no theatrical dominance. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, not cold. "Mr. Voss," she said evenly. Her voice carried the confidence of someone used to negotiation rooms, not battlefields. "I'm Helena Reed." Declan recognized the name, CEO of Aegis Neurosystems. She did not smile. "We're not here to threaten you." "Your men walked up my road," Declan replied. "Standard precaution." Her gaze shifted briefly to Marcus on the screen. "Marcus believes you deserve transparency." Declan's jaw tightened. "You faked his death." Helena did not deny it. "We protected him." From what? From becoming a statistic. Silence. Helena continued. "Our research reduces suicide risk in high-trauma veterans by recalibrating stress reflexes. We don't create aggression, we regulate it." Declan's eyes moved toward the machine behind Marcus. "And the side effects?" Helena hesitated only slightly. "Every treatment has trade-offs." Marcus stepped forward. "It works, Declan." Declan looked at him. "You look tired." A flicker of irritation crossed Marcus's face. "I'm functional." Helena nodded to someone off screen. "Show him." The technician adjusted settings. The array powered up. A low-frequency hum filled the room, barely audible but tangible. Declan felt pressure at the base of his skull, faint and distant. Mara stiffened instantly. Her ears twitched. Her breathing shifted. Marcus watched carefully. "It's controlled exposure," he said. "Measured amplitude." The hum deepened slightly. Mara took a step back. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but confusion. Declan crouched instinctively. "It's okay," he murmured. The hum pulsed again, for 2 seconds. Mara's focus broke. Her gaze drifted past Declan as if tracking something invisible. Her body lowered into a defensive posture, not toward the technicians, not toward Marcus, toward Declan. A low growl emerged from her chest, not loud, not hostile, reflexive. Her eyes locked onto him, and did not recognize him. Declan did not reach for a weapon. He did not stand. He lowered himself further, removing his height advantage. "Mara." His voice was steady, no command tone, just presence. The hum intensified. Mara's muscles trembled. Marcus's face tightened. "Reduce amplitude," he ordered sharply. The technician hesitated. Declan leaned forward slowly, palms open. "Mara, look at me." Her growl faltered. Her eyes flickered. For a fraction of a second, she looked through him again. Then, she blinked. Recognition flooded back into her posture. The growl stopped. Her body relaxed incrementally, confusion replaced by clarity. The hum cut abruptly. Silence returned like a held breath released. Declan stayed kneeling until Mara leaned forward and pressed her head lightly against his chest. He closed his eyes for 1 second. When he looked up, Marcus was staring at them, not analytically, not clinically. Something else had entered his expression. Doubt. Helena's image remained composed on the screen, but her fingers tightened slightly against the edge of her desk. The machine had not malfunctioned. It had performed exactly as designed. But it had failed at something deeper. Marcus stepped back slowly, gaze never leaving Mara. She broke through it, he said quietly. Declan rose. She chose. Marcus didn't respond. For the first time since they had locked eyes across the clearing, his certainty faltered. And in that hesitation, something shifted. The central control room felt smaller than it had minutes before. Declan stood beneath recessed lighting that hummed softly above rows of monitors and biometric panels. The equipment was arranged with clinical precision. Steel racks bolted to the concrete floor, fiber cables coiled neatly. Waveform displays streaming data in real time. It didn't look like a weapon facility. It looked like a laboratory that believed in itself. Marcus remained near the primary console, shoulders squared but not defensive. The private security team had withdrawn to the perimeter, alert but uninvolved. Helena Reed's screen had gone dark for now. The room held only the low mechanical murmur of processors and the subtle pulse of current traveling through circuitry. Mara paced slowly near Declan's left side. She did not approach the machine. Her ears shifted constantly, micro-adjusting to frequencies too faint for human hearing. The faint silver in her muzzle caught the sterile light. Her posture was not panicked, but vigilant. Marcus leaned back against the console, arms folded loosely. "You saw the metrics," he said quietly. Declan didn't respond immediately. "I saw elevated cortisol and 3 hours of sleep." Marcus let out a short breath. "Better than none." Declan met his eyes. "Is it?" Marcus didn't look away. For a moment, silence settled between them. Not hostile, not comfortable. Marcus walked toward one of the monitors and pulled up archive statistics. Graphs filled the screen. Suicide rates among veterans over the last decade, insomnia prevalence, untreated PTSD cases. 17 a day, Marcus said. Sometimes more. He tapped the display lightly. "These aren't abstract numbers. I've attended funerals. I've answered calls from wives who found husbands in garages." His voice did not crack. It hardened. "We trained our nervous systems to survive war. Then we expected them to shut down, like lights, when the contract ended." Declan folded his arms slowly. "And you think amplifying that wiring fixes it?" Marcus shook his head. "Not amplifying. Regulating." He stepped closer to the array, resting his hand on its metal housing. "The reflex isn't the problem. The instability is. When the system fires randomly, when threat response activates without threat, that's what destroys people." Declan studied him carefully. Marcus continued. "This tech doesn't create aggression. It modulates thresholds. It helps veterans retain survival instinct without drowning in it." Declan felt something shift inside him, an old doubt rising where certainty once lived. He remembered the nights after returning home, the way silence felt predatory, the way every sudden noise triggered muscle memory before thought. He had survived by isolation. Not everyone could. Marcus lowered his voice. "I don't want power, Declan." For the first time, something softer edged his words. "I want sleep." That admission landed heavier than any statistic. Marcus's gaze drifted briefly toward the floor, then returned, steady. 15 years. I haven't slept more than 3 consecutive hours since that deployment. Declan watched his breathing. Too shallow, too constant. "You're still running," Declan said. Marcus nodded faintly. "Exactly." Mara stopped pacing. Her body went rigid, not toward Marcus, not toward Declan. Toward the far corner of the room. Her head tilted slightly, ears pinned back in concentration. A low-frequency oscillation vibrated faintly, almost imperceptible. But the waveform monitor flickered erratically. Mara's eyes widened. Not fear. Recognition. She moved closer to Declan and pressed lightly against his knee. Then shifted her gaze directly at the machine, then back at him. A deliberate exchange, as if to say, "This is not stable." At that exact moment, one of the side monitors spiked, briefly, before flattening again. Marcus turned sharply. "That's not part of the cycle," he muttered. The room returned to its steady hum, but Mara did not relax. And Declan felt something colder than doubt take hold. Marcus moved quickly to the console, reviewing diagnostic data. "It's a minor variance," he said, more to himself than to Declan. Declan stepped closer, scanning the screen. The waveform spike had lasted less than a second, but its amplitude exceeded normal parameters. "What happens if that spike sustains?" Declan asked. Marcus hesitated. "It won't." "That's not what I asked." Marcus's jaw tightened. "If it sustained at that level, it could overload neural pathways, temporary disorientation at best, seizure at worst." Declan looked at Mara. Her muscles were still tense. "You've tested this on how many?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. "Enough to prove stabilization in most cases." "Most?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "No therapy is universal." Declan's voice lowered. "How many didn't stabilize?" Marcus looked at him directly. "Some didn't tolerate it." The air felt heavier now, not from machinery, but from implication. "You mean permanent damage," Declan said. Marcus didn't deny it. His expression didn't carry guilt. It carried resignation. They were already deteriorating. Declan stepped away from the console, running a hand through his short hair. "This isn't recalibration," he said quietly. "It's gambling." Marcus shook his head. "It's triage." The word hung between them. Outside, sunlight filtered through the high basement windows, soft and indifferent. Declan thought about the men he had served with, the ones who had folded inward after returning home, the ones who didn't isolate as successfully as he had. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe the system wasn't about control. Maybe it was about survival. But Mara's body remained tight beside him. She trusted instinct over data. Declan moved toward the array, studying its construction more carefully now. The emitters were arranged in a ring, precise spacing calibrated to cranial geometry. Power regulators fed into the central processor, where amplitude and frequency were adjusted in controlled increments, clean, clinical, and one glitch away from catastrophe. "You're pushing thresholds," Declan said quietly. Marcus didn't deny it. "We're refining them." Declan turned sharply. "And if you miscalculate?" Marcus held his gaze. "I accept that risk." Declan's eyes hardened. "For yourself?" Marcus didn't respond. Declan understood. Marcus wasn't experimenting on strangers alone. He was experimenting on himself. That realization unsettled him more than anything else. Mara shifted suddenly, stepping between the two men, not aggressive, just aligned with Declan again. Marcus looked down at her. She resisted faster than any subject we've tested. Declan didn't smile. She wasn't trained to obey, blindly. Marcus studied the dog carefully. She could help us refine the algorithm. Declan's expression darkened instantly. "No." Marcus lifted a hand. Not harm. Observation. No. The firmness in Declan's voice cut cleanly. Silence followed. Marcus stepped back. I need you to understand something. He walked to a side console and pulled up a different data set. Sleep pattern analysis over time. The screen displayed a baseline for Marcus before Phase 2 implementation. Insomnia. Severe. Then incremental improvements. Marginal, but measurable. I don't wake up screaming anymore, Marcus said quietly. Declan's chest tightened. Marcus continued. I still don't sleep long, but when I do, I don't relive it. He looked directly at Declan. Can you say the same? Declan didn't answer, because he couldn't. Mara's breathing steadied slightly, though her eyes remained alert. Marcus straightened. There's one way to settle this. Declan's eyes narrowed. Marcus stepped away from the console and faced him fully. You participate in one controlled session. Declan didn't react. Marcus continued. You always responded within stable parameters during Phase 1. Your thresholds were consistent. Declan's jaw tightened at the memory. You run a controlled cycle, Marcus said. Low amplitude, short duration. We monitor response. You see the data for yourself. Declan remained still. And if I refuse? Marcus's expression softened slightly. Not threatening, not coercive. Then you walk away believing we're reckless. Declan felt the weight of the room press in around him. The hum of equipment. The faint scent of ozone. The look in Marcus's eyes. Not ambition, not dominance. Desperation. Mara looked up at Declan. Her gaze was steady, grounded, present. Declan inhaled slowly. You're asking me to trust the same system that rewrote your death certificate. Marcus didn't flinch. I'm asking you to trust me. The request lingered in the sterile air. Declan's pulse remained steady. But something else stirred beneath it. Responsibility, doubt, possibility. Marcus took one final step back toward the array. Just one session, he said quietly, to prove it can be controlled. The machine hummed softly behind him, and for the first time since stepping into the basement. Declan hesitated. The array was already active when Declan stepped forward. No countdown, no ceremony, just a low-frequency vibration humming through the concrete floor, subtle but undeniable. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The sound bypassed the ears and moved straight into the spine. Marcus stood at the main console, posture rigid but not triumphant. His eyes were locked on Declan, not as an operator studying a subject, but as a drowning man watching someone approach with air. You can step out at any time, Marcus said. Declan gave a small nod. Mara did not move. Her body aligned with his, but she remained outside the marked radius, painted faintly on the floor. Her ears were slightly angled back, her breathing slow but tense. Declan walked into the stimulation field. The hum deepened. Not louder. Deeper. He felt it first behind his eyes, a tightening pressure, like atmospheric change before a storm. His pulse increased gradually, not violently. He didn't panic. He cataloged. Heart, rate rising. Peripheral awareness sharpening. Breathing shallower. The room shifted. Not physically, perceptually. Edges became cleaner, colors sharper, movement more defined. The sterile basement receded. His focus narrowed instinctively to points of motion. Marcus's hand near the console, the technician by the side wall, the slight sway of cable wiring overhead. His pupils constricted. Marcus watched the biometric screen. Elevated, but stable, he murmured. Declan's shoulders rolled back unconsciously. His muscles coiled. Not an anxiety, but readiness. He felt it. The old current. The combat wiring that never truly left. He hadn't lost it. He had buried it. Now it was rising again, clean and precise. He turned slightly, every sound separated into layers. The faint breath of the technician. The subtle shift of weight on concrete. Even the slow thud of his own pulse became data. There was no tremor in his hands, no fog. Just clarity. A dangerous clarity. Marcus stepped closer, eyes wide, not fearful, hopeful. "You see," he said quietly. "It stabilizes the response. No chaos, no overload." Declan didn't answer, because part of him agreed. The anxiety that usually rode beneath his skin was gone, replaced by cold, efficient focus. He could feel how easily he could operate in this state, how fast he could move, how decisive. For a moment, just a moment. He imagined going back into a firefight like this. No hesitation, no doubt. Marcus's voice cut in again. "Your heart rate is high, but controlled. No spike instability." Declan's gaze flicked to the far end of the room. He saw everything, including Mara. She had not moved, but her body had changed. Her muscles were trembling, not with fear, with strain. Her ears were pinned back, eyes locked not on Marcus, not on the machine, on him. Her breath came faster now, not barking, not whining, just shaking. Declan's hearing sharpened further. He could detect something beneath the an irregular sub-frequency, too faint for equipment to flag, but not faint enough for instinct to ignore. He glanced at the waveform display. It looked stable, too stable. The calm inside him deepened. But something was wrong. Mara took one step forward, then another. She crossed into the edge of the field. Her legs trembled harder now. Her eyes met Declan's, and for the first time since entering the room, something flickered inside his chest that the system did not suppress. Concern. Her pupils dilated unnaturally. She wasn't reacting to him. She was reacting to something beneath the surface. Then she let out a low, broken growl, not defensive, warning. And in that instant, Declan realized. The machine wasn't stabilizing. It was pushing toward a plateau. One step before collapse. Marcus leaned toward the console. "Her cortisol spike is abnormal," he muttered. "Reduce amplitude," Declan said evenly. "Your readings are optimal." "Reduce it," Marcus hesitated. The technician glanced between them. For a split second, Declan felt irritation flare. Sharp, efficient, actionable. He could override the console himself. He saw the control panel layout already mapped in his head. He was faster now. He could move before Marcus reacted. The thought felt clean, logical. He suppressed it. "Lower it," he repeated. Marcus adjusted the output slightly. The hum decreased, but not enough. Declan's perception remained heightened. Too heightened. His vision tunneled further. He could sense how easily this state could become addictive. No weakness, no fatigue, no second-guessing. He could live here. He could become this again. Marcus stepped closer, his voice urgent now. "You feel it, don't you? The control, the absence of chaos." Declan did. That was the problem. He turned his head toward Mara again. Her trembling intensified. She was not frightened. She was overloaded. Her nervous system was absorbing fluctuations that his recalibrated mind could no longer detect. She was compensating for him. He remembered why he left active operations, not because he had lost his edge, because he had refused to live permanently in that edge. The hyper-awareness had followed him home, into sleep, into silence, into relationships he never built. He had chosen isolation over constant war mode, not weakness, choice. Marcus's eyes shone with something desperate. "You can help us refine it," he said. "You're stable under load. You could be proof." Declan looked at him. "You don't want stabilization," he said quietly. "You want permanence." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I want reliability." Declan shook his head slowly. "This isn't regulation. It's amplification masked as balance." Marcus's frustration broke through. "You'd rather they keep dying?" The words hit hard. Declan's focus sharpened again, almost painfully. He could dismantle Marcus's argument point by point. He could shut down the room. He could take control. The machine thrummed beneath him. He saw the amplifier module on the far side of the array. Main gain regulator housed within a reinforced casing. One strike would destabilize the loop, one decisive movement. Marcus stepped closer. "Stay in it longer," he urged. "Let the system reach equilibrium." Declan's breathing slowed unnaturally. The room felt like a battlefield again. Clear, precise, ready. Mara let out a sharper sound this time, not a bark. A fractured vibration. Her legs buckled slightly, but she remained standing. That was the breaking point. Declan stepped backward out of the central ring. The shift was immediate. Clarity dulled, edges softened. His pulse steadied. But the machine continued running. Mara staggered back as well, her tremors intensifying. "Shut it down," Declan ordered. Marcus hesitated. "It's within threshold. It's climbing." Marcus looked at the monitor. The numbers were still technically within limits. Declan didn't wait. He moved. Not in rage, in certainty. He crossed the room in 3 strides and drove his elbow into the reinforced casing of the amplifier module. Metal buckled. A shower of sparks erupted. The hum spiked violently, then fractured. The waveform on the monitor scrambled into static. Marcus lunged toward the console. "Declan!" Declan struck again, tearing the housing free. The amplifier snapped loose from its mounts. The system howled briefly, then died. Silence slammed into the room. Mara collapsed onto her side, breathing hard but conscious. The technician stumbled backward, stunned. Marcus staggered 2 steps, gripping the edge of the console. Then he dropped to one knee. Not dead, not unconscious. But his breathing became erratic, his eyes unfocused. The sudden neural drop, after being partially synchronized with the system, hit him like whiplash. Declan caught him before he fell completely. Marcus's body felt rigid, overstimulated nerves firing chaotically. "You cut it too fast," Marcus gasped. Declan lowered him carefully to the floor. "You pushed it too far." Marcus's pupils struggled to stabilize. His muscles twitched involuntarily. The technician knelt beside him. "He's in neural shock." Declan glanced at Mara. She was pushing herself upright, shaking off residual overload. Her eyes were clear again. Marcus's hand clutched Declan's sleeve weakly. "I was close," he whispered. Declan's jaw tightened. "Close to what?" Marcus's answer came in fragments. "Quiet. Inside." Then his body slackened, not unconscious, but heavily impaired. Declan stood slowly. The machine lay destroyed. The room smelled faintly of burnt circuitry. The forest outside remained bright and untouched. Inside, everything had changed. Dawn arrived without ceremony. The forest did not know what had happened beneath its soil. Mist lifted gently from the lake near Declan's cabin. dissolving into early sunlight that filtered through pine branches in long golden shafts. The air smelled of thawed earth and cold water. Nothing in the trees hinted that a private research facility had nearly pushed human nervous systems past their breaking point. The hospital grounds, however, told a different story. Yellow federal tape stretched across the broken entrance. 2 unmarked SUVs were parked at the perimeter, government plates glinting under the morning light. Temporary security fencing had been installed overnight. Technicians in windbreakers and latex gloves moved carefully in and out of the basement entrance. The building was sealed, not destroyed, preserved as evidence. Declan stood at a distance, watching from the tree line. Mara stood beside him. Her posture was steady now, balanced, alert, but no longer strained. Tremor from the previous day had faded completely. The silver strands in her muzzle caught the sunlight, making her look older than she felt. Footsteps approached from behind. Declan did not turn immediately. The man who emerged onto the ridge was in his early 50s, tall but slightly stooped from years bent over desks rather than rifles. He wore a brown tweed jacket despite the outdoor setting, the fabric slightly frayed at the elbows. A thin charcoal sweater showed beneath it. Wire-rimmed glasses rested low on his nose. His hair, salt and pepper, neatly combed back, fluttered in the breeze. Caleb Mercer, investigative journalist. His eyes were careful eyes, not cold, not intrusive, observant. The kind of eyes that absorbed before they spoke. He stopped several paces away. "You look exactly like the file photo," Caleb said quietly. Declan glanced at him briefly. "You don't." Caleb smiled faintly. "That's intentional." He didn't carry a camera. No visible microphone. Just a leather-bound notebook tucked beneath his arm. "I released the preliminary report at 4 a.m., Caleb continued. "Limited details. Enough to trigger oversight without sensationalizing." Declan nodded once. Caleb studied him for a moment. "You could have let it continue," he said. "Not accusatory, just factual." Declan didn't respond immediately. The forest wind moved softly through the trees. "I've covered veterans' affairs for 20 years, Caleb went on. "I've written obituaries I wish I hadn't." His voice lowered. "My older brother was one of them." Declan's gaze shifted slightly. Caleb's expression remained steady, but something tightened beneath it. He came back from Afghanistan and tried to pretend he was fine. He wasn't. Caleb exhaled slowly. He didn't survive the pretending. Silence settled between them, not heavy, but shared. "The data Marcus showed you," Caleb added. "It's real." "I know," Declan said. Caleb studied the sealed hospital. "The government has suspended all Aegis Neurosystems contracts pending review," he said. "They're calling it an emergency evaluation." "And Helena Reed?" Declan asked. Caleb adjusted his glasses. "She hasn't been arrested." Declan wasn't surprised. "She's stepped down temporarily as CEO. The board removed her from operational control to protect investors." A faint, humorless breath escaped Declan. "Temporary." "Public optics," Caleb said quietly. They needed distance. Mara shifted slightly, scanning the wind. Her ears perked, not in alarm. In awareness, Mara suddenly moved forward 3 steps and stopped. Her body aligned toward the hospital. Not tense, not aggressive, focused. Declan followed her gaze. At a second-floor window, behind the tape, behind the sealed glass, there was movement. Not mechanical. Human. A figure stood briefly in the broken frame of the window, then disappeared. Caleb narrowed his eyes. "That section is supposed to be cleared," he murmured. Declan didn't speak. Mara let out a soft breath through her nose, not warning, recognition. as if she knew the difference between threat and something unfinished. The window remained empty. The sunlight stayed bright. But something had not fully ended. Hours later, Declan received confirmation. Marcus was alive, transferred to a federal medical facility 2 counties south. Neurological trauma, but stable. No permanent paralysis. Extensive therapy required. For the first time in years, Marcus would not be wired to an external stimulus. No forced calibration. No induced thresholds. Just silence. Caleb sat on a fallen log near the ridge while speaking into a secure call. "Yes," he said, pacing slightly. "We are not framing it as rogue experimentation. The ethical argument is complicated. That nuance matters." He paused, listening. "No. We're not naming individual test subjects. We protect identities." He ended the call and turned toward Declan. "Marcus consented to speak on record once he's cleared," Caleb said. "That surprised me." Declan wasn't sure it should have. Marcus had never been power-hungry. He had been exhausted. "What will you write?" Declan asked. Caleb closed his notebook slowly. The truth. That the intention wasn't evil. That the execution was flawed. That desperation and innovation often share the same origin. Declan nodded. "And you?" Caleb asked. "Me? You'll be offered advisory roles, oversight positions, consultation contracts." Declan's mouth twitched faintly. "They already called." Caleb wasn't surprised. "And?" Declan looked out over the lake. "I declined." Caleb studied him. "You don't want to help reform it?" Declan took his time before answering. "I helped once." He felt Mara press lightly against his leg. "I won't help build something that tempts people to live permanently in survival mode." Caleb nodded slowly. "You're aware that some will call you irresponsible." Declan's eyes remained on the horizon. "Freedom isn't always efficient." Caleb gave a quiet half-smile. "That line might make the article. Don't quote me." They stood in silence for a while longer. Eventually, Caleb extended his hand. Declan shook it once, firm, brief. "No sensationalism," Declan said. "Never," Caleb replied. He turned and began walking down the ridge toward his vehicle. The government SUVs remained parked near the hospital, agents moving like quiet ants around the perimeter. Declan waited until Caleb disappeared from sight. Then he began walking with Mara along the higher ridge path. The forest felt open again, breathable. Mara trotted slightly ahead, then paused at a clearing overlooking the hospital grounds. Declan stopped beside her. Below them, the building stood silent. No hum, no vibration, no hidden frequency beneath the earth. Just brick and broken glass catching morning light. Declan pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. It was an old training evaluation. Sable. Age, 3 at time of review. Designation, K9 candidate. Final assessment line highlighted in faded ink. Unpredictable under stimulus. He stared at the words for a long moment. Back then, unpredictability had been considered a liability, a deviation from controlled response. He looked down at Mara. Her eyes were clear, steady, intelligent. She met his gaze without command, without calibration, without modulation. She had chosen him when the machine could not. He folded the paper slowly. "Unpredictable," he murmured. Mara flicked her ears slightly. A breeze moved across the ridge. Declan's lips curved, not into triumph, into something quieter. Acceptance. "Good," he said softly. They stood there for a while, man and dog, above a sealed building that had tried to quantify survival. The forest did not hum. The air did not vibrate. The sun rose higher. Freedom, Declan realized, was not the absence of fear. It was the refusal to let fear be engineered. Mara shifted her weight and leaned gently against him. Declan rested his hand briefly on her head. Then they turned and walked back toward the cabin. Not to hide, not to run, but to live without amplification. Behind them, the hospital remained under guard. Ahead of them, the lake reflected a sky that required no calibration. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not the one that changes the world. It is the one that changes a heart. In this story, no superpowers were created. No perfect system saved humanity. What endured was something far quieter: loyalty, conscience, and the courage to choose freedom over control. There are moments in life when we stand at the edge of becoming harder, faster, more efficient, but not necessarily more human. And in those moments, something deeper speaks. Some call it instinct, some call it love, some call it the voice of God. Maybe the true miracle is not in technology, nor in power, but in the unseen hand that reminds us who we are when we almost forget. The bond between a man and a dog. The decision to protect rather than dominate. The strength to walk away when staying would be easier. Every day, in ordinary life, we face smaller versions of the same choice. To live in fear or to live in faith. To control or to trust. To harden or to stay compassionate. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of something real and sacred in your own life, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Leave a comment and tell us what freedom means to you. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue telling stories that matter. May God bless you and your family. May He bring peace to restless minds, healing to wounded hearts, and clarity when the noise feels overwhelming. And may you always recognize the quiet miracles in your own life.